Keith, Chris Makepeace, finds AJ's body in a dumpster just outside the After Dark Club while escaping from the albino street gang. He, AJ, Robert Rusler, and Duncan, Jed Watanabe, had an earlier confrontation with, and then runs when a garbage truck driver coming to get the trash tries to run him over. Because he is on the club's payroll. He finds a payphone and contacts the cops, ordering them to come to the club and accuse the employees of murdering AJ. He returns to the club and informs Duncan that AJ is dead and the cops are on their way, but when he goes to the bathroom to collect his thoughts, AJ appears alive and claims that his death was a joke. The vampires at the club resurrected him after discovering that Keith had called the cops, so Keith's accusation would be without merit. When the cops come, they discover that AJ is still alive and leave without making any arrests. Keith is left alone in the back room with AJ and one of the strippers, and when Keith presses AJ to go with him, the dancer exposes herself to be a vampire and attacks him. AJ attempts to stop her, but she pushes him away, and Keith stabs her in the heart with a wooden stiletto heel, killing her. AJ tells Keith that all of the club's workers are vampires and shows him that he has become one as well. However, he hates it, especially because he is now finding himself craving Keith's blood and doesn't want to hurt him. He soon hands Keith a sharp piece of broken furniture from the fight with the stripper and asks him to stake him, but Keith can't bring himself to do it. AJ then informs him that wooden stakes, fire, and sunlight can all kill vampires, and he understands that Keith will not kill him and is prepared to die for him since he feels a remnant of his former self still exists. He then advances toward Keith as if he's about to bite him, but instead of biting him, he snatches the stake from Keith and stakes himself. He then seems to die after throwing Keith his vehicle keys and telling him to make tracks while reiterating the tactics of eliminating vampires. When Amaretto, Didi Pfeiffer, the waitress, walks in and witnesses the aftermath, Keith calms her down. Duncan is gathered in the main room, and the two attempt to flee, but Vic, Sandy Barron, Vlad, Brad Logan, and the strippers refuse to let them go. Vic explains to Keith that they have no chance of getting out of here, since even if they do, they will have to deal with the vampires wandering the streets. Keith answers by pretending capitulation and making a final request for alcohol for himself and his companions. Vic agrees, so Keith requests 3 brandies, which he gets with the aid of Amaretto, and they secretly spill all over the place. Keith then lights his glass and sets fire to the bar, then sets fire to the spilt brandy, keeping the vampires at bay. While Vic commits himself as a result of his failure, Keith and his pals make their way out of the basement through the trapdoor and into the automobile, dodging attacks by a corrupt garbage truck driver and a corrupt tow truck driver. Duncan, on the other hand, admits that he was bitten and converted earlier and tries to attack Keith and Amaretto. He causes the couple to wreck the car and set it on fire, but Keith and Amaretto manage to leave before the car explodes, killing him. Keith and Amaretto go into a pawn shop in search of weapons, and Keith discovers a bow and fires an arrow at Amaretto, demanding to know who she is and how she knows him. While she proves she isn't a vampire, she doesn't think now is the right moment to tell him what he wants to know. He then shoots the arrow, which pierces the heart of a nearby vampire who had been stalking her. They ultimately locate an opening into the sewer as they leave and evade additional vampires, during which the albino gang shows up again, but the vampires murder them. Before they go down, Amaretto eventually admits that her true name is Allison and that she knows him from a game of spin the bottle they used to play when they were in 5th grade. They stumble into the vampire's lair while wandering the sewers, and they hide just as they all come in to rest for the day in their coffins. When they try to sneak back out, Allison accidentally reveals their presence, so Keith knocks over several fuel drums spread around the lair, and once they're out the door, he ignites the fuel and burns the vampires to death. Keith then discovers Allison has vanished, but she cries for him, so he follows the cry and finds Allison in the clutches of the head vampire Katrina, Grace Jones, who has her fangs bared and is about to attack Allison. Keith is preparing his bow and arrow for a shot when he notices a little beam of sunshine shining down from between some wooden planks above him. The smell of his fingers bleeding from pulling the bowstring taut distracts Katrina, allowing him to send the arrow into her lips and pin her head to the wall without injuring Allison. Allison then uses a pipe to stab her in the chest and rushes over to Keith's side. Katrina quickly regains her freedom and approaches Keith, who, when she gets near enough, knocks the boards away, bathing Katrina in sunlight and murdering her. After that, Keith and Allison discover a nearby manhole and begin climbing up to street level, but Vlad emerges and takes Allison back down. Keith confronts him, and a resurrected AJ fatally stakes him from behind when Vlad informs him that he and Allison must die for killing Katrina. AJ reveals to the two his suicide attempt failed because to the fact that the stake was made of 4 mica. While Keith and Allison reach the surface, AJ remains in the sewer, telling Keith that he has changed his mind about his new situation and wants to make the best of it, suggesting that he go to night school or look for a job during graveyard shift hours. Keith kisses Allison and then urges AJ to follow them from below, promising to take care of everything, as he and Allison walk out along the deserted street.